Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Hurricane Fiona is bearing down on the Dominican Republic, causing power outages and massive flooding. We've got the developments. Plus, two fishermen set sail without the emergency locator or life raft in the cockpit of their fishing boat.
We do that, that means we'll just have to clean it when we get there. Nothing ever happens during the daytime. And that was our mindset.
See why they regret that decision and what happens next. And the new animated cartoon Little Demons continues to draw controversy. Now faith leaders and critics are sending warnings to parents.
They are trying to desensitize us and our kids to the demonic. It's that simple. We've seen that over and over and over again.
We'll show you how to protect your children. All these stories and more coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin this half hour with the Hurricane Fiona bearing down on the Dominican Republic after knocking out power, the power grid, and unleashing floods and landslides in Puerto Rico. The governor says the damage was catastrophic, and so far, one death has been reported. Dale Hurd has more on our top story.
Officials in Puerto Rico say it's still too early to estimate the damage from a storm that is still punishing the island, with torrential rain and historic flooding this morning. The powerful storm arrived Sunday afternoon, dumping up to 30 inches of rain, unleashing dangerous floodwaters, landslides, and knocking out the power grid. This man says he was sleeping when the roof of his home was ripped off and landed over there. In one mountain town, rushing water washed away this bridge. Power poles and a guardrail connected to the bridge were ripped from the ground by the current, taking everything connected to the structure downstream. That bridge was installed after Hurricane Maria slammed Puerto Rico in 2017 and killed nearly 3,000 people, leaving millions without food and basic needs. The mayor of Louisa says this is the area we're most worried about, because when they open the floodgates on the big river, these houses here will have water up to the second floor. The Category 1 storm came ashore with maximum sustained winds of 90 miles per hour, lashing the U.S. territory that is still recovering from a string of strong earthquakes and Maria. Puerto Rico's governor says the experience with Maria helped the island prepare.
That's why people are very responsive and they cooperate, because they remember, they still remember Maria. And nobody wants that happening again, and including the aftermath. So this is all hands on deck.
A former governor's response to Maria turned into a fiasco when 1,000 pallets of water bottles sent by FEMA for storm victims were found undelivered, sitting out in the sun at a former naval base. The current governor is pledging a better response.
I don't want any loss of life here. Once that's taken care of, then restoring the electric service.
The entire electric grid on the island was knocked out of service, and officials have been working to restore power. Shelters have been opened for those in need. The White House approved an emergency declaration for Puerto Rico, freeing up federal resources for emergency response and disaster relief efforts. Heavy rain and storm surge flooding is expected for the Dominican Republic as Fiona turns north. It's expected to stay clear of the U.S. East Coast, but could threaten Bermuda later this week. Fiona is only the third hurricane in 2022, after an unusually calm opening to the Atlantic hurricane season. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
More severe weather around the world, including in southwestern Japan. Typhoon Nanmadol made landfall today with heavy rainfall and wind gusts of up to 100 miles an hour. Thousands of people evacuated their homes, going to gyms and other facilities as a precaution. Japanese media reports more than 60 injuries, including people falling in the floodwaters and others being hit with glass as a result of those high winds. The storm is expected to continue moving through northeasterly over Japan's main island of Honshu and other regions throughout the day and into Tuesday. Earlier today, mourners paid their final respects to the coffin of Queen Elizabeth II. Now a state funeral being held in Britain, drawing crowds of people in the streets of London and leaders from around the world, including President Biden, presidents and kings, as well as prime ministers. Queen Elizabeth died September 8th after ruling in Britain for 7 decades. She'll be buried in Windsor alongside her late husband, Prince Philip. Now we turn to the war in Ukraine. A Russian missile struck close to a nuclear power plant that is, according to Ukrainian officials. An atomic energy operator says the attack happened around midnight, hitting an industrial complex just 300 meters from the nuclear power plant. The explosion shattered more than 100 windows and forced a nearby hydropower plant to temporarily shut down. Russia did not immediately acknowledge the strike on the industrial complex. To set fire in the West Bank and to fuel the flames. That is what Iran has openly declared to do to Israel. And already this year, Israeli security services have foiled more than 300 terror plots. Break the Wave is the name of the counterterrorism operation that Israel has launched in response to this surge of attacks. Julie Stahl is on the story.
The director of Israel's Shin Bet Secret Service says there's been an upsurge in Palestinian terror attacks this year.
We foiled 312 significant terrorist attacks, stabbings, shootings, suicide attacks, and have made 2,000 arrests.
Speaking at a counterterrorism summit, Ronen Bar pointed to a massive increase in shooting attacks against Israeli troops and civilians in the West Bank. As Israel heads to its 5th election in 3 years, Bar says the instability has led to more attacks.
From the intelligence that we have read, from the investigations of attackers we have conducted, and also from many years of familiarity with our adversaries, wherever they are, we can say today without a shadow of a doubt, the political instability, the growing internal division are an encouragement to the axis of evil, to the terror organizations and individual attackers.
Bar says the rift developing in Israeli society is the most complex challenge Israel is facing. Israel's enemies, he says, believe Israel's national resilience is fading. In an operation called Break the Wave, the IDF stepped up its counterterrorism raids in Palestinian areas a few months ago. According to Israel's public broadcaster Khan, that led to a warning from Egypt urging Israel to back off, saying it worries about an escalation and possibly the situation spinning out of control. Bar calls Iran the underlying problem, a sentiment echoed by former Israeli intelligence officer Avi Melamed.
The Iranian regime says openly that their intention is to set fire in the West Bank and to fuel the flames in the West Bank.
According to Melamed, another contributing factor behind the violence is that the Palestinian Authority is at a crossroads.
The term of the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, seemingly is towards the end. There is already an ongoing process where potential rivalries are kind of like taking positions. There is a lot of weapons in the West Bank.
Should Abbas leave the picture, Melamed describes one scenario being a power vacuum leading to an internal armed struggle between Palestinian factions. And even now, there's weakening of the Palestinian Authority's sovereignty in parts of the West Bank in places like Jenin, Hebron, and Nablus.
This is a very alarming process, and this is, by the way, one of the major reasons Israel is constantly and recently increasingly intercept that phenomenon, and particularly in those hubs or pockets.
According to Bar, the PA security forces need to be strengthened in order to restore calm, and their public wants that too. But it's up to the PA to do it. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Coming up, see what happens when a colossal wave sends a fishing boat into a deep dive, breaking the vessel in two, dumping 2 fishermen in the middle of the Gulf Stream. Stay with us. Nothing ever happens during the daytime. Those are some famous last words for Captain Eric Bingham and First Mate Johnny Savage. That's why the 2 fishermen chose not to put the emergency locator or life raft in the cockpit of their fishing boat. Hours later, both lived to regret that decision when they ran into the perfect storm of a wave. Wendy Griffith has this story.
April 13th, 1998, began as a beautiful spring morning. with 27-year-old first mate Johnny Savage doing what he loved. He and Captain Eric Bingham were making final preparations to leave Key West for a 350-mile trip to Cancun on a 56-foot sports fishing boat called the Aninga.
So that morning we got up and Eric made his prize breakfast, which was a bagel with a fresh slice of tomato and pepper and a little bit of salmon cream cheese spread on it. We had a few of those. And
they decided not to put the emergency locator beacon or life raft in the cockpit.
If we do that, that means we'll just have to clean it when we get there. Nothing ever happens during the daytime. And that was our mindset.
Johnny and Eric were about 90 miles into their journey when suddenly,
when we looked in front of us, it was like nothing I've ever seen before in my life. It was like a hole. Again, we were in a 2 to 3 foot following sea, and when the Aninga went off this edge and went down into this rogue wave, the whole boat fell into it.
So you said it looked like a scene out of the movie The Perfect Storm.
Yes, it did. That particular part of it did, going down the face of the wave as we were heading down it.
So how come you didn't just fly off the boat?
We were hanging on.
The force of the drop broke the Aninga in two, and to make matters worse, the radios were dead, and the lifeboat, life jackets, and locator beacon were somewhere inside the sinking boat. Johnny and Eric were suddenly treading water.
We were 90 miles out in the middle of the Gulf Stream, and nobody knew where we were.
That's when a small white igloo cooler suddenly popped up.
We both grabbed the handle, and this was, I want to say this was one of the first miracles. We had never talked about faith or anything like that. I mean, we were just fishermen, and on a trip. In perfect unison, handle on the cooler, grabbed each other, and immediately, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we just kept on repeating the Lord's Prayer, And we knew immediately, without the distress call, without the EPIRB, we were going to die.
When they had finished the Lord's Prayer, a surfboard that Johnny had packed at the last minute floated to the surface.
And the surfboard was in the bow, so for that thing to come out of there like that shows how much that boat separated.
To get to it, however, Johnny would have to swim through diesel fuel. He prayed.
Please, Lord, don't let me throw up. I can't afford to lose this food that's in my stomach. I'm going to need this energy.
After several hours of holding on to just a broken surfboard, some good news. The life jackets floated to the surface. Then, about midday, they spotted a cruise ship on the horizon and sent up some flares. But no luck.
And when the cruise ship went past us, that was tough. That was really hard because we were sure that was going to be our salvation.
As the waves crashed around him, Johnny, who was raised in the church, began to think about his life.
I was living a rock star lifestyle, basically. I mean, as far as my faith goes, I love the Lord, but I was more concerned about going out at night partying.
Then, Johnny decided to leave Eric and look one more time for the beacon. When he couldn't find it, he lost all hope of being rescued.
Got to the point where I had made the decision that drowning would be better than getting ripped apart by sharks. So I had planned my death. So I had taken my life jacket off. I was in the process of rolling under.
But then something supernatural happened.
All of a sudden, the greatest feeling of warmth and just strength, power, I don't know really what word to put in it, just overcame my whole body. And then I heard, John, you spend a lot of time out here. Pick your line and paddle it. And when I heard that, it came from over there. I mean, Eric is, a mile or so away from it. It's not, and I don't understand how I could hear a voice. I knew it was of God, but I really didn't understand all of it. But I knew that he was with me.
So when you heard that voice say, pick a line, what did that mean?
So it meant to find a direction. Find a direction and go that way. The Holy Spirit in me was able to let me see a pattern to go. And I took that pattern right back to Eric's.
By now, it's nearly sunset. Eric is suffering from hypothermia and can no longer feel the lower part of his body. That's when another miracle happened. Johnny's backpack appeared.
There's wetsuits in the backpack. So in this rough, terrible sea state, this backpack floats up to him, the one that needed it the most at the time.
But what Johnny and Eric didn't know was that morning a call went out from Cancun to Key West.
Don't send any boats. It's getting bad. Stop them all.
Because of that storm, the chances of any boats being in their area were almost non-existent. Still, Johnny had faith that they'd be rescued.
You couldn't tell me that God wasn't real.
Then, Johnny spotted a red tube flare floating about 50 yards away and swam after it.
And I tell you, the hope that was in that, I mean, we were so excited.
After Johnny reached the flare, he heard Eric screaming and feared the worst.
So then I just started swimming to him as hard as I could. And as I got closer to him, I could hear him screaming, "It's a fish boat. It's a fish boat."
They quickly lit the flare.
My finger was on the trigger, getting ready to pull the trigger, and then all of a sudden I heard, "Whoa!" And I turned around and looked, and there's the 72-foot pike and ditch digger.
This huge boat literally just shows up. And you were looking at the little fishing boat.
We were looking at the 50-footer, and the 72-footer was right behind us, never knew it.
Turns out the big boat left the dock before they heard about the storm. And then once out there, changed direction and were heading for Cuba to avoid the high seas, putting them perfectly in the path of Johnny and Eric.
First time I cried. It was kind of funny, though, because, you know, they stopped and they spun the boat around. And so these boats, we have a big door in the back for bringing in big fish. And we were the big fish they were getting ready to drag in.
24 years later, Johnny has put their story in a new book called Lost in the Stream, the miraculous story of two fishermen lost at sea.
Johnny, why are you writing your book now?
We're in a time where people need hope. People need to know no matter how bad things look in front of you, that, you know, put your hope in the Lord, because it's all part of His plan anyway.
Today, Johnny is married to the love of his life, Samantha, and still enjoys boating and fishing.
Johnny, why do you think you still get so emotional when you tell this story?
I don't deserve to be here. I wasn't living a lifestyle that deserved to be rescued. And that's probably the heart of me. They're tears, they're grateful tears, and I'm so thankful for what God has done in my life. I'm glad to be here.
Still ahead, see why faith leaders and critics sound a warning to parents about the new animated series Little Demons when we come back. And welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. The new animated cartoon Little Demons is gaining attention and raising concerns. The series focuses on a 13-year-old girl whose father is Satan. Now the Parents, Television, and Media Council is sending warnings to advertisers in hopes they'll reconsider their sponsorship. And many faith leaders and critics are sending warnings to parents about how they believe this series will get the attention of children. Billy Hallowell has the story.
Mom, get in! There's no more putting this off. Your dad is the devil, and you're the Antichrist.
That's a scene from the new cartoon called Little Demon. The animated show about a 13-year-old girl whose father is the devil is getting attention and raising eyebrows. Pastor Mike Signorelli of V1 Church in New York City is just one of many faith leaders issuing a warning.
They are trying to desensitize us and our kids to the demonic. It's that simple. We've seen that over and over and over again, but a show comes out and the attempt is to make something that biblically is not normal, trying to accept something that God clearly opposes. It's disgusting.
Signorelli and other critics believe the adult-themed animated show airing on Disney-owned FXX will naturally pique children's interests.
They're going to tell you it's an adult show, but we all know that children want to watch the things that they shouldn't watch. And so it's a cartoon. It's in a format kids love. And the main character is in middle school. And so it's highly relatable to kids that are in an age where they're making decisions about their identity.
And that's a highly impressionable demographic these images could harm.
People have to know that their teenager, if they find it, is going to think that it's entertaining. I mean, it's really an incredible hook to hook people into Satanism, and Satan clubs and all this are becoming common. So the whole culture is in the midst of a satanic revolution, if you want to put it in those terms.
Dr. Ted Baer, founder of Movie Guide, encourages parents to actively train their children.
Well, parents have a tremendously big problem today because the average child, by the time they're 17, has spent 64,000 hours with the media and about 18,000 hours in school and about 11,000 down the line to a couple of thousand hours with parents. And so the parents are overwhelmed. They're working, they're tired, they got to put up with this. They can't watch the teenager. So you have to teach the teenager or any age of child to be media-wise.
As for Signorelli, he encourages Christians to be biblically minded, recognizing they're in the midst of a spiritual battle.
There's a war spiritually going on. The book of Ephesians talks about it, and our kids will be the casualties. There's a fight over a generation.
And in the midst of a spiritual war, both Signorelli and Baer want discerning believers to equip kids with awareness about this growing cultural phenomenon. This is Billy Hollowell for CBN News.
Great news for the film Lifemark. Theaters are extending its run because of a successful opening weekend at the box office. Lifemark is based on a true story that deals with an issue of choosing adoption over abortion. Actor and producer Alex Kendrick shared some reactions to the film with FaithWire.com's Billy Hollowell.
We're hearing wonderful testimonies of people saying our church group was sitting in the theater and we saw a woman sitting off to the side crying at the end of the movie. We kind of went over, started a conversation. She shared her story with us and we were able to minister to her, pray for her, talk about salvation with her. So stories like that are coming in regularly over the last week. So we're very, very grateful.
Lifemark began screening in 1,500 theaters. 1,100 of them have now asked to continue showing it at least another week. Time now for your Monday motivation, and I want to leave you with this thought. When climbing life's mountains, take your eyes off how high you must climb. Fix your focus on just the next step you need to take, and then look at how far you've come with gratitude. It will make that difficult climb a lot easier and smoother. With that word, I want you to make today a marvelous Monday and have yourself a wonderful week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. You can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online, cbnnews.com. We would love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us at newswatch@cbn.com. You can also reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you tomorrow.